Good morning and welcome back to Late Start Show. We are here today with Mr. Russell Breuer, University School class of 1998 graduate and a founder and CEO of Spot and Tango, a fresh pet food company that's been making waves in the pet health world. How are you doing today, Mr. Breuer?
Fantastic. Thanks for having me on. 1998 feels like yesterday.
Yeah, well, thanks for joining us. And we always start at the beginning in our episodes and kind of talk about that journey to university school. So we're going to start there. Just what was kind of your childhood like? Where did you grow up?
Sure. Grew up in Shaker Heights, went to Fernway Public School, and then transferred to University School in fifth grade, so lower campus, and then went all the way through, obviously, to the upper school in Hunting Valley. Lived on Shelburne Road, Grenway first, then Shelburne Road, which is striking distance from lower campus, which was nice. And then the family moved out to Aurora, so a bit of a commute, 30, 40 minutes way back when, but. Yeah, no, lots of family and friends still live in and around the Cleveland area, so I'm back with decent frequency.
Kind of thinking back to your time at US, were there any teachers or classes that had a big impact on you? And do you still remember some of those classes or teachers?
Yes, I thought you'd ask me this question, so I had to like jog my memory this morning. Roger Yadeed, who passed recently, was a big fan favorite, languages, and spent a number of years going abroad, trips to France, Spain, Italy. I remember those spring break trips very fondly. Senor Pla, of course. The list goes on and on. There's some folks that are still there, Mrs. Morgan, of course, and a few others. But no, think very fondly of my university school days, and still very much in touch. I think I mentioned too, kind of in the warm-up show, we had an event at Spot and Tango headquarters just before the break, for the holiday. We had about 70 alumni in the New York City area, came to the office and shared a bit of the story of kind of how I built this with Tom Barry, who was an early investor in the company, and of course an alumni of University School as well. So the community beyond senior year is strong. There's good depth and breadth of bench.
Yeah, that's awesome. And what about outside the classroom, like those sports clubs or other activities that obviously US emphasizes? What were some of those spaces for you?
So I played soccer, I played tennis. I was editor in chief of the Mabian. So I spent a lot of time, Saturdays and Sundays, kind of assembling photos and copy and kind of bringing memories to life, in a published edition. So that was kind of a notable achievement. But yeah, on the athletic field, I was always very involved, from middle school throughout. I think that was really important generally that at US, everyone's really encouraged to participate, kind of. I would say, regardless of ability, there's opportunities for everyone in multiple sports. Um, I wasn't like the greatest tennis player, but I got some reps, and really enjoyed myself. So really, again, think very highly of those days.
It might be hard to just pinpoint one, but do you have a favorite memory or maybe just a funny story from your US days? Maybe something that still to this day you can kind of smile or when you think about it?
Gosh, that is a great question. Honestly, I think it was probably the Mabian experience. It was a small group of folks, obviously all volunteer. The job was kind of after hours, before school, after school, weekends, and really gave me an opportunity to interact with both students, my peers, and also the faculty. And I remember in those days we were given, a proper budget. It was kind of a 25 or $30,000 budget, to put forth to actually publishing, which is material. Those are meaningful dollars, and was trusted to kind of lead the ship. And so I think really fondly of that. And we have obviously a copy at home, which kind of validates that actually to my young children that dad actually did some things. Yes, I would say that was probably one experience that stood out most.
And then looking back, in what ways did US really prepare you kind of for the experience, whether in college, business, or just life in general? Are there any skills that you kind of took from high school and US that you kind of find yourself even using today?
Yeah, honestly, work ethic one, but first principles problem solving, I think is really stands far and above, regardless of the issue. And we can talk about some of the challenges of building a company from the ground up and from zero to one to larger. First principles problem solving is really breaking down a problem into its individual components and then assessing how to address each of those components to come up with a solution. I think university school really taught structured thinking, Because in my day today, I face new challenges every day. There's things we talk about internally, which is like net new, right? Of like, okay, have never faced that challenge before, whether either an individual or a circumstance. And it's like, okay, what is the structure and way to approach a solution? I think that's some of the framework that US taught for sure, that I certainly employed in college and then afterwards as well.
And after US, you went down to Atlanta to study at Emory for college. And
That's
there
right.
you studied international studies and Spanish. So what
Yes.
drew you to those subjects, and maybe how have they been useful in ways you might not have expected at the time?
Yeah, so I would say always an interest in business. The Spanish language. My father was born in Caracas in Venezuela. My grandfather was a diplomat, so I've always had a Spanish influence. I wanted to carry those language studies from fifth grade all the way through high school. Hence the reference to Yedid and Senor Pla. And then through college, majored in Spanish, but also supplemented that with international studies, which is within the political science realm. Always had an itch to do something overseas. And I thought by having language and then some of the political science background as well, that would be an enabling factor, which ultimately led to a career in management consulting. I did transfer overseas and worked in London for 8 years in management consulting and then private equity. So that was a means to an end. But it was a broad kind of liberal arts degree. I don't think there was a vision on day one of freshman year of like I wanted to be an investment banker or a lawyer or an accountant or an astronaut. It was like I'm drawn to business and international, and so I chose those two curriculums as a means to actually achieving that destination.
After kind of Emory and after college and business school, you started your career in consulting, as you said, in private equity, where you spent about 14 years in that world. Was that always the plan from the beginning, or did you kind of find your way slowly into those industries? And how did that early career really get started? Do you remember that kind of first job?
Yes, yes. Honestly, friends had kind of mentioned the like management consulting or consulting world, while at college as being a great place to cut your teeth and learn about business. And I'd argue for a lot of college graduates or either MBAs as well. A lot of people go into consulting, right? So you work with it's strategy, you work with large corporates, Fortune 50 companies, and again, it's all first principles problem solving. Either it's research driven, primary or secondary. It's understanding what the problem is for the clients and then figuring out ways to solve that, either through Excel models or desktop research or otherwise. That for me was a training ground of how to learn more about the real world. And I started doing that in Washington, D.C. And of course, Kaiser Associates was the firm. They transferred me to London, which was meant to be kind of a 12-month stint, and it turned into 8 years. I ended up pledging my allegiance to the Queen, getting a passport. For a Cleveland kid living in London, it was a playground, right? Taking the Eurostar to Belgium or Paris on weekends or ski trips. In those days, it was like all EasyJet and Ryanair, 20 euro flights, hit the slopes. It was absolutely an incredible experience. And of course, eventually my career evolved into finance because I was more interested in kind of how to capitalize companies and the financial world, which again, a lot of these skills informed my entrepreneurial journey. And kind of to reference the international studies in Spanish, I was able to apply my Spanish skills. I did a lot of work in Madrid and Spain, did a lot of work in Mexico. So I used Spanish on the job, and that was a gateway, a door to getting those jobs and those projects within the consulting world. So, but again, the impetus for that and like the introduction was networking, right? So, folks at college, like, hey, this is a cool career. If you're interested in that, like, give it a try. I know some folks, and so networking was really important to provide some of those opportunities.
And you obviously did make that move after the successful 14-year career and made the big leap to entrepreneurship. What was that spark that kind of piqued your interest so much that you decided to leave that stability and start something of your own?
Yeah, so consulting taught me like how the world works, and I've been fascinated with things. This is like my own personal journey. I love factories and I like supply chains. Like my brain, it just gravitates towards like you can make a product, you can ship it to like a third party warehouse. That warehouse can ship it to a customer, and there's like 18 wheelers and trucks and pallets and big equipment and automation. I've just always been fascinated by that type of work. And so my consulting days, I worked on projects, gosh, with companies like Procter and Gamble and Lockheed Martin, Nortel, Verizon, like the list goes, BP overseas. So I saw that world, and I always had an itch to be what we refer to as being an operator. And I'm sure you guys did the same. Everyone has good ideas. There's always a good mousetrap, and over a coffee, or you're hanging out with your friends on the weekend, and the post-it note of like, or even just like in the car, it's like, oh, hey, it would be cool to build fill in the blank, right? This app or this idea, or like, what if, or like, there should be a better way of doing X. I was always the guy with my friends to show up the next day having thought through the idea a bit more. So I felt this urge to do something more, and so that was always kind of embedded in my psychology. And then when I moved back I was transferred to New York. Actually, I met Tom Barry. I used to work for Tom Barry at Zephyr Management. He's an early investor in the company, of course, U.S. alumni, board member as well. And so I was kind of reintroduced to New York and the U.S., and then eventually found my way into the pet food industry. My wife was cooking fresh human grade meals for her mini goldendoodle Jack. This is 10 odd years ago. And we're mission driven people, big believers that health and wellness is a right, not a luxury. So this very kind of homegrown idea in a studio apartment in New York City, which is totally cliche, of course, turned into this thing. And it was like nights and weekends, and we developed these recipes that were developed with veterinary nutritionists. They're balanced for dogs' dietary requirements. And so we kind of bootstrapped, built a website all on the side. So in those days, I was doing the private equity thing. My wife was working at a bulge bracket bank, side hustling, right? I was the guy in a suit going to an incubator kitchen in Queens and cooking dog food. My friends were like, okay, whatever you do, don't do that. Okay. There's like a million other things, like stick with your day job. But I felt this urge, and then ultimately we felt and saw velocity, as in like sales. The neighbors told their friends, friends told friends, and all of a sudden this demand emerged for these products, and there was an inkling of like, hey, there's something here. Let's tease this out, and let's really evolve this into a full-flushed business.
And I'm sure can you tell us about some of those early hiccups or maybe funny mishaps in the beginning, like some of those kind of oops moments that
How long do you have? I could see weeks. So, there's an expression like fail fast, fail often. So this is, studio apartment. I had to get my food handler's license to figure out how to cook this stuff. So taking a step back, what is Spot Tango? It's all fresh human grade ingredients. So anything you'd feed your family and friends, we give it to the dogs. There's a nutritional premix, which is added to each of the meals, which makes it nutritionally adequate for a dog's dietary needs. But again, it's ground beef, ground turkey, green beans, brown rice, like all this stuff, like literally go to Heinz, buy it off the shelf. That's what goes into the dog's diet, okay? The early days, I mentioned like incubator kitchen. It was like food handler's license. It's administered in 23 different languages in New York City. Most people in the restaurant trade need a food handler's license. It teaches you how to like cook product. You don't store raw meat over finished product, temperature danger zone, how to cook. I had to learn how to cook. So I can assure you there were many days, I call this like the dark times of like working the graveyard shift, right? From like 8 p.m. until 4 o'clock in the morning with 3 or 4 guys from the Bronx. Like I take my tie and suit off and put on like an apron and a hairnet and cook product. And then we'd have bike messengers show up the next day and deliver that product to customers throughout the 5 boroughs, Manhattan, Brooklyn, etc. So many mishaps, late deliveries, we would ship boxes, they would fail, the boxes would break, we'd run out of product. I'd go to a butcher on Ditmars Avenue in Queens. And in the early days, it was like I'd buy 20 pounds of beef, turkey, and lamb at a time. And all of a sudden I started buying like 100 pounds each, 500 pounds each. And the guy's like, what are you doing? He was selling most of the lamb to the Greek community, right, for Easter. And I was buying it, feeding it to dogs. He thought I was out of my mind. So they were very early mornings and late nights. Gosh, a P&L in those days was like the furthest thing from my mind. It was all about getting product market fit. Like, can I create something and can I meet demand? Is there interest in those products? And that took a lot of sweat equity. And in those days I had kind of 1 or 2 kids, and kids turned into 3. I had the dog. I was living in Midtown Manhattan. So there was like a lot on the plate, and it's all on the side, right? So this was not a full-time thing. It was nights and weekends. It got to a point, of course, where Molly said, this is either like, I'll do it full time, you do it full time, or like, it's over. Like, we can't do it all. And so that's when that was kind of April of 2018 when I decided, okay, let's do this full time. But there are war stories until the end of time. I can assure you, in the entrepreneurial world, things break literally every day, even now. Right? I'll get a message and it's like, oh, a truck broke down in the desert. There's $250,000 worth of fresh frozen product. Truck's out of gas. There's no tow trucks. What do you do? It's like the MacGyver moment. And you're like, okay, first principles. Okay. First principles. How do we let's assess like the issue. Then let's walk through the steps to resolution. So, and I could talk for hours about the scar tissue. I build it every day.
With your dogs, whether or not it's Check or Sully, right? How have you kind of really made sure that this product is just the best for any type of dog? And how have you really made sure that like it is so healthy for these like kind of animals?
Yeah. So firstly, it's personalized, right? So what does personalization mean? So on our website, we ask a number of questions about your dog's weight, activity level, and lifestyle, and that informs the number of calories your dog needs per day and per meal, right? So why are calories important? Calorie informs weight. There's a serious problem that people refer to it as like the pet health epidemic. 1 in 3 dogs is overweight. There are 90 million dogs in the US. It's a lot of dogs. And the reason for that is in the back of most pet food labels, there'll be a range. If your dog weighs between, I'm making this up, 20 to 40 pounds, feed 1 to 3 scoops a day. That's a huge caloric band. I may feed Woofy 1 scoop in the day, and he maybe gets 2 at night because he's been a good dog, but that doesn't do Woofy any benefits to his waistline. And so part of what we're doing is like dialing in calories in a personalized offering. That's one. And then second is all of our meals exclude things like artificial additives, synthetics, food colognes, perfumes, things you probably read about in the pet food industry. Historically, the industry is a highly processed diet, high extrusion at high heat, high temperature, and that's not good. It leads to things like allergies, dander, other pet health afflictions. And so our mission was to address that by offering a complete holistic health solution with whole ingredients. I mean, to be analogous, it's like, how would you feel if you ate McDonald's every day, right? Like, not great. So we're really trying to offer what's called affordable health and wellness, dialed in through a personalized solution. And that's worked well, not only for our dogs, but our customers as well.
I'm just thinking about my dog who, we still give her the kibble. And she, every day she'll go up, she'll kind of push it around because obviously same thing she eats every day. And I think like if she had this fresh food, how much more life would we see in her? Like how much more energetic would she be? Have you seen like any stories of dogs that have shifted and been just more full of life?
Thousands and thousands of stories of dogs who either lost weight, boost in energy, have appetite is a big one, believe it or not. A lot of dogs actually are picky eaters and they kind of push the food around. They're not interested. That's a big one. Better skin and coat health, reduced dander, reduction of kind of teary eyes. So we've seen it across the gamut. And we obviously are in touch with our customers in real time since we're direct to consumer, right? So we get all first party data, which is the beauty of our model is our customers tell us like, what do they want? What's going well? Like what's not going well? So we have food, we have supplements, we offer treats. We launched a new product called Pup Gum recently, which we can talk about, which is a fun launch, which is in the dental care category. The customers, because they're in touch with us on email, SMS, chat, voice, I talk to customers every day. We learn so much from their experience beyond even just the product quality or format, the delivery experience, is FedEx or UPS late, the internet experience, the website, et cetera. So there's so much that we've learned either from their dog's experience and how they benefit from the diet, or the customer experience, which informs how we take action internally to meet those needs.
I'm kind of curious about your company's name. Spot Tango is a great name for just kind of this dog company. What is the story behind it? And was it like in a moment that happened? Was it the name of other dogs? How do you come up with the brand name?
It's a good question. So I want to say Spot is a dog, Tango's a cat, or Spot and Tango are no. That's just, there's really no story. The truth is, the name of the company is Breuer Premium Pet Food Company. That was the original name. It's still kind of the holding company. Breuer is my surname, Breuer. The challenge with that is it's hard to pronounce, Breuer, and it's very difficult to spell. Is the U a U or a W? Now, if you Google search Breuer in New York City, Marcel Breuer, the artist, pops up, okay? In the e-commerce game, if a customer can't spell the name of the company, that's bad for business. They'll never get to your website, or they'll be fed a Google ad from some other entity. And so we decided kind of in February of 2019 to rebrand. And Spot Tango actually was I have kind of a formal co-founder. Once we decided to kind of scale full time, I built a founding team. My co-founder's father came up with the name Spot and Tango. And the reason is it's simple to spell, to remember, and it's ownable, right? So when you search any name, like if you're doing a search for a company or otherwise, you want to own the first page search results, right? If there are other brands competing for those clicks, either through an ad or organic search, that's bad for business. Like they're competing for clicks. Spot and Tango, like no one owns Spot and Tango. It's all us. So we're on, first 25 pages. That's just our real estate. And so there were both branding reasons to kind of rebrand, to change the name for memorability's sake, and then also strategic reasons from the e-commerce perspective.
And you guys are obviously a pet food brand that focuses on quality, and in an industry that's super competitive. How do you keep that mission kind of front and center while also, you guys are obviously a business, and so how do you, I guess the question is, how do you keep that quality center while also trying to compete in a super competitive industry?
Yeah, so a couple of answers. One is scales unlock margin wins for sure, right? Two, the UnKibble story is really kind of we call it the kind of catching a tiger by the toe. We were kind of fresh frozen in the early days. So the original recipes, it's like a lean cuisine for dogs, right? It's a cooked format, it's flash frozen and then shipped direct to consumer with installation, dry ice, etc. One. The challenge with that, and we still have those recipes today, they're wildly successful, but the challenge with that is it's cold chain costs money. It's expensive. And two, it's inconvenient. So when you're kind of wear your consumer hat, you have to defrost, you have to store the meals in your freezer. And if you're a New York City customer, you've got a very small constrained space, and you're basically choosing between a Spot and Tango and your own food. Like that's a challenge. Two, it's inconvenient. You have to defrost and serve. It's quite messy. So we incorporated that customer feedback to my earlier point and decided to launch what's now called UnKibble. And UnKibble is a product, we extract all of the water, okay? We use freeze dryers. The freeze dryer is about the size of a shipping container. They're very large. Take out the water, which makes the product shelf stable. If it's shelf stable, you don't need cold chain, so we cut costs. So we're 30 to 40% less expensive than anybody else in the market offering these types of ingredients. Still delivered direct to consumer, still delivered personalized, and still using the same ingredients. So we became very price competitive, to answer your question more directly in terms of like that, keeping quality, but competing. We were competing on price. And then the big game change for us, we launched in April 2020 UnKibble. We were a 5-man team. It was like in the midst of COVID. We all had COVID. We were all fully remote. We had a few dollars on the balance sheet. Okay. This is like the early, we call it the science experiment days of like, a strong wind, the company may blow over. We launched UnKibble, and I'll never forget, we were debating whether to order a $70,000 or $80,000 purchase order, which is material. It's a lot of money. And we would last kind of 3 or 4 months. We sold out in 3 days. And we issued a second purchase order for $500,000. We didn't even have $500,000. And it was like, okay, how do we figure this out? How do we scale this product category? It started this journey over the next 2 or 3 years of outsourcing to, at our peak, 6 other co-manufacturers across the country that were making UnKibble. So like imagine 6 factories in places like Texas, New York, Utah, California, Oregon. Then you have to connect all the dots with trucks, freight, and then you have to connect all the dots with warehouses to get to the end consumer via FedEx or UPS. So our supply chain became unbelievably complicated and difficult to manage. And long story short, we then decided to insource. So we built a factory at Allentown, Pennsylvania. We insourced all of the production and then unlocked significant margin wins for the business. So again, enabling to be price competitive because we weaned off third parties, which charge price premium. We call it tolling, but price premium for our products. And then the third point is economies of scale. So once we had kind of hit high velocity in terms of growth and growing the business from kind of 6 figures to 9 figures over a 5-year period, now the purchase orders for raw ingredients like meat or turkey or ingredients or fresh vegetables, etc., is very large, and so the price comes down. Your cost of goods sold goes down. But again, that's 5 years of story in kind of a minute. So it takes a while to get there, but those have been some of the enabling factors of how we've been able to compete.
As a leader, what kind of company culture have you tried to build at Spot Tango? What do you want your team to kind of feel about the work environment and its mission and kind of just learn from the company?
That's an awesome question. I'm the culture keeper, and the founding team is we have to incentivize very high performing. So a lot of the folks we hire at the company, we call them MBBs, McKinsey, Bain, BCG. They're usually high pedigree academics, consulting background. Not that that's the only background you need, but we do hire a lot from the consulting world because they teach first principles in particular in the business setting. We do all sorts of things to kind of maintain culture. Firstly, we're in our office headquarters 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Allentown 7 days a week. So productions doesn't stop. We do things like all hands meetings once a month. We bring in guest speakers. We do lunch and learns. We're big on education. So when someone brings a new product or technology to the table, they talk about it internally. They'll have like an hour-long session. We're big on continuing education. So whether the accounting team wants to kind of level skill up, we sponsor that as a company. So we want to provide an environment where people want to come to the office. And we're also adapting in real time. I think it's been a challenge for a lot of companies kind of post-COVID of like, well, are you remote? Are you full-time in 5 days? Are you hybrid? Like, what is the balance? I think we've kind of been able to thread the needle of the work-life balance of we respect people's personal time. They're also working, right? So we pay them money. So, okay, you got to be in the office, but we ask that people are kind of plugged in when they're obviously at home. And so we've kind of found the balance. It's still a challenge, admittedly. And it's something we're very proactive about because we want to really ensure that we have high retention of hiring takes a while. We've made mistakes along the way and hired the wrong people, but we've done a much better job now at hiring the right people and then retaining that talent, which is really, because again, this is not just a me story. There's a whole team, ops, marketing, finance, supply chain, creative, data, engineering, all insourced. It's all of those that contribute to the collective success of the company. And so ensuring those folks stay motivated is really, really important to the success of the business.
And obviously, entrepreneurship is a roller coaster. I'm sure you've had those moments where you're like, wow, I made it. And then kind of those where it's like, should I really be doing this? But how do you kind of stay in the middle of that roller coaster and kind of try to keep, things in perspective and not get too high or too low?
Yeah, that's guys, you're asking great questions. That's also really insightful. Entrepreneurship can be really emotional because there are highs and lows, right? There can be the reward of selling a product really quickly, and you're like, yeah, great, like revenue's up. And then you're like, well, wait a minute, I have to operationalize and make the widget. How the heck am I going to do that? I need equipment, I need people, I haven't even figured that out. So it's like one success becomes a problem, right? And so I've in the early days, it was very difficult for sure when you're, a 3 or 4 person team. And again, like quit job, income goes to zero, raise a little bit of capital from family and friends. Everyone's looking to you, to ensure you're doing the right things and making the right choices. I'd say like physical activity is healthy. So I work out. I have 3 kids and a dog and obviously family at home, my wife, family at home. And so that's a great counterbalance for me. But I'd say like staying healthy is really important. And then it's the people you surround yourself with, right? Where every challenge that we face together. And that's really therapeutic. I mean, I think oftentimes founders sit in these ivory towers and think they have to come up with all the answers, and that's just not the reality. If you have, good advisors, good colleagues on the management team, you problem solve together. And I think the kind of final comment I would make is openness, right? Where being open to admitting that maybe you're experiencing, a challenge or having a question. We do that constantly. It's like, well, I ask a lot of dumb questions because sometimes I'm probing at whether if someone has done their homework correctly. So I'm gut checking, or I actually don't know. So that's part of like the learning journey, right? So those are some of the tactics that I've employed over time.
What's been the most rewarding part of building Spot Tango for you personally? Whether it's what guy gives you the greatest satisfaction, whether it's seeing the positive impact on dogs' health, building something of your own, providing jobs, or just something else?
Honestly, like the customer testimonials are awesome. We get a lot of email and SMS from pet parents who are honestly often are in tears. My dog wouldn't eat, or my dog had X, Y, or Z affliction. We've tried a dozen different brands to address that afflictions, and like Spot and Tango really works. Thank you. And so there's that just amazing connection with the consumer. Um, and obviously now we've kind of scaled the company. It's that's it. One is obviously the kind of consumer experience. Two, customer experience. Two is what we've built as a team. I mean, there's a lot of physicality to what we do. I mean, there's a 70,000 square foot factory with 150 people, in Allentown. So you see those, you kind of walk the halls and amongst equipment, and you're like, you think back like, wow, not too long ago, we were in a WeWork in Manhattan with a whiteboard dreaming, and those things have now kind of manifested and come to life. And we're still, I always say we have a lot of wood to chop, so we're still going, but I'd say those have been kind of two particular highlights.
And your company obviously serves dog owners, but also the dogs, and those dogs are animals that can teach us a lot. I know my dog has certainly taught me a lot. What have you learned the most from dogs and just, serving them?
Yeah, I mean, dogs are very loyal creatures. And I'd say like we have dogs in the office, we're a dog friendly office. So it's like an amazing, um, to like, working in pets fun, right? Um, they always say babies, beasts are good industries to be in, and beauty, right? Because there's like a highly emotive reality. It's why, people like to, like, who doesn't want to click a like on a picture of a puppy or a baby, or, this is like the world we live in. So that's been really fun. And obviously interacting with dogs. And then I would say, commercially speaking, we are a subscription model. So you can't order our products once, you subscribe. And the beauty of a subscription model, not like meal kits, but for dogs need consistency of diet and consistency of protein. If you switch your diet, like beef on a Monday, turkey on a Tuesday, that can be a disaster on the Persian rug. Nobody wants that. So consistency is good. If there's high palatability, i.e., if a dog likes the product, there's high repeat purchase and high retention. So we've seen a correlation between those two metrics. Which is, again, kind of commercially speaking, very good for the business model.
And what advice would you kind of give to young people that maybe current U.S. students like us or aspiring entrepreneurs who might want to start their own business someday, but might be scared to take that first step?
Yeah, another great question. In my experience, the consulting and finance background really prepared me for some of the basic requirements of the job, like raising capital or building a P&L or a balance sheet or a cash flow statement, um, or what a supply chain is. So I learning those things on the job, I think, would have been difficult because we were moving so quickly, and you don't have the luxury of time. You've got to move fast. So I'd say, for folks that are interested, like getting even not, admittedly, 14 years is a long. I mean, I started the company when I was 35, 38 when I went full time, but 35 kind of the bootstrap days, the dark days, as I alluded to, which I think was late, honestly. A lot of folks, I think you get like 2 or 3 years of some real world experience. Then you can kind of go start something. I'd say that one, two, younger, better. But by the time I started the company, I'd had kids already, kind of mortgage, dog, all the things. That just creates more. That's more balance sheet responsibility. The younger you are with some real world experience, you can take greater risk, and it's okay if the house of cards blows over. You can do another one, do another one. I was kind of later stage in life where I probably had less opportunity to fail. It's kind of like, okay, kind of need to make this work. So I'd say those are two things in particular that I would recommend.
You have recent releases such as the Pet Gum. Where do you kind of think in 5 or 10 years into the future, what do you really envision for Spot Tango? And what do you want to see the company achieve long term? And maybe where do you even see yourself in 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, so a lot of road ahead. So we continue to scale. The business is growing 50%, 50% year over year. We're profitable. We're 9 figures. So it's still growing at a very, very high clip. And that's due to the size of the category. There's 90 million dogs in the US, and we have 25 basis points of the market. And we've built a 9 figure brand. So you think about that in terms of the ceiling. There is no ceiling. And this is, by the way, it's not there's no winner takes all. Within the pet food category, there can be a lot of folks that can be successful, but we want to keep growing the core business, one. Two, we launched Pup Gum, which is a new dental care offering that's doing very, very well. That's actually outside of the Spot Tango ecosystem as a separate brand and also offered to existing customers. Going international, which is happening March 1st. We're going to Canada. We're launching, quote unquote, overseas, if that counts. And then I think brick and mortar is on the roadmap as well. Selling on shelf in national retail, I think is a huge opportunity for the business as well. So thinking through omni-channel. So 5 years from now, honestly, I'm going to be here. I'm a number of years in, but it's such an exciting opportunity yet. And I'm energized. I think the question behind the question oftentimes people ask is like, are you still, or is management team, generally speaking, still energized by running the company? And do you want to get out of bed every day and problem solve? And the answer is yes. So we can talk again, in 5 years, and I will still be doing the same thing.
And speaking of that big picture, for you personally, what kind of legacy do you want to leave behind, whether that's through Spot and Tango or through your life and family in general? What do you hope people will remember you for?
Giving back, and like sharing my experiences, and that teaching element I think is like really important. Because again, I try to tell a version of entrepreneurship which is real, that's not BS, because it's really hard. It's really hard. And so I hope that my shared experience can help others learn and adapt and help them get involved. I think entrepreneurship is awesome. And so enabling people to take those risks and help think through those opportunities, I think would be something that's really important to me.
Finally, one of the questions that we ask all of our guests, and it's one of my favorite questions personally, is what is your why? With everything you do, building this company, improving pets' lives, leading your team, what is the core driving force that gets you up in the morning and keeps you going day after day?
Grit. I just, again, Cleveland kid, Midwest. I think it's in the water. I'm sure you guys are very similar. Just like very hardworking and the work ethic that we talked about earlier. And again, kind of this dream of being an operator and building something. We are still building. So that to me is kind of the driving force. And again, I think I'm learning every day. I'm not static in terms of like my brain developing and ingesting new content and making mistakes and learning from them. I find that to be very rewarding. And ultimately, I hope that benefits my kids. Because we talk about it around the dinner table. Where'd the apple come from? Where'd the lean cuisine come from? Okay, well, how's the farmer doing? And I'm trying to, again, share those experiences so people can understand a bit more how the world works.
Well, Mr. Breuer, it's been great having you on the show today. Thank you so much for taking the time to share your insights and experiences and stories with us. To our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll hope you'll join us next Wednesday, as always, for another episode of Late Start Show. Thank you, Mr.
Awesome.
Breuer.
Thanks, Charlie. Thanks, Jack. Appreciate it.